each of our journeys are different and unique. To compare your journey to somebody else's journey or how that made you feel is not fair to you or to that other person.
All of our paths are unique, Jason, but they're also so very similar, aren't they? Mm-hmm. We all go through heartbreak. We all go through loss. We all go through tough times. We all go through rejection. We all go through abandonment. So everybody's story is unique, but it's also so very universal, it's unbelievable. Because what we need to do is start loving ourselves first.
Yes.
And so if I'm hating on you, I haven't done much self-work, and I haven't worked on being a better me. Because if I love me unconditionally, there's no way I'm gonna hate you or anybody else.
Hey, what's going on, friends? Jason here with another episode of the Love Local Chicagoland podcast. Today, we're going to talk about leadership. We're going to talk about it's not where you start and what you have gone through in life, but it's about the work that you put in and the values that you show up with. Is that what can make this life truly abundant? We're probably going to get into a little bit of faith, and I get to talk to Louie Sharp. Many of you may know him as a business owner with Sharp Auto Body. He is the Gifted Leader podcast, which I totally recommend. He is a veteran of the United States Marine Corps. He's also a speaker. Many of you in the community might know that, but if not, or if so, you should stick around to be able to listen to this show, because I promise you we're going to come from our hearts. We're going to lead with love, and my hope is that I could bring his message out and his heart out, because I think there's something truly beautiful with what he's been building and continues to build with his life as he sets forth to be able to leave a beautiful legacy. So we're going to go from grace to growth to everything in between, and we're going to have a good conversation. So continue watching. Louie, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I appreciate those kind words. That's very thoughtful.
Yeah, well, man, I knew you because of Engaging Speakers. I was at different Engaging Speakers events, and I just had a lot of respect for you. I saw you show up as just a great speaker, but it was how you showed up for others that really impressed me. I left that Engaging Speakers community just because of time constraints and being called in other directions, and we got the opportunity to be kind of brought back into place because of social media. You
Right.
asked me to be on your show, which was truly humbling, and I had a great time, and I'm grateful for that. But through that, I feel like we found that there's a lot of similarities with us. There's a lot of differences within us, but that really the big piece of it is that if we could sit down again and have a good conversation and flip the tables, what could we share with the community? And this message today, I think we're really going to be able to not only share some of your story, but your life lessons too. You really inspired me. Like, you just keep going, you keep learning, you keep growing, and you kind of keep faith and love at the forefront, which is something for me that has shaped my life. So when I see somebody else doing that, especially somebody that I could learn from, it gets me fired up to do these shows. First question that I want to be able to ask you is, when you think about where you started and where you're at now, what's on your heart about that journey? And not just success, but what it took to grow you into the man that you are today.
That's a great question. I think there's a couple things on my heart. One of them is the simple fact that I could have never dreamt where I am, right? I had dreams as a boy, and I had a rough childhood. I went through the Marines, as you said. And I think the thing that's the most amazing is, and to your point, you're absolutely right, not what I've accomplished, but who I'm busy being and still becoming. And I think that I've been blessed, because at some point I realized that I had to get better at being me. And I love the fact that there's really no end to that.
You said you didn't come from much, that things weren't easy early on. What did that season of your life teach you about grit and grace?
So that's a great question, too. One of the things that I learned really early on is that quitting wasn't an option. Giving up wasn't an option. And that stuck with me. I've got a really good friend of mine, and he's been with me in Sharp Auto Body for 43 of the 44 years. And one of the things he said, you're one of the most persistent people I've ever seen. but I think that's what I learned early on. Quitting wasn't an option, And I'll tell you a really interesting story. When I was in the 5th grade, this was when doctors would still come to your house. And I was sick, and the doctor came to the house, and he examined me, and then he stepped outside the bedroom with my dad. But they didn't step out far enough where I could overhear the conversation. And the doctor told my dad, well, he's got a 50-50 chance. He's got scarlet fever, and so there's a 50-50 chance he makes it. And laying in that bed, I thought, no, I got a 100% chance. Dying's, I'm not ready to go. And those kinds of things early on just made me realize that we have some impact and we have some influence on what's going to happen and who we become. And again, once you give up, you're out of the game.
Yeah, it seems like you, from early on, you were in touch with the spirit within and your heart within. Would that be accurate?
Oh, so I share with people what's fascinating is when I was a little baby, before I could walk and talk, I remembered I was somewhere else before I got here. I couldn't remember where that was, but I could remember I was somewhere before I got here. And so, yeah, I've always had this connection to a higher power, spirit, God. It doesn't matter what you call it to me, but it's there.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
For people who start rough or don't have all the right tools, what's the first thing they can control that starts them on the path to growth?
So I'd like to touch on something you said earlier and then get to the answer to
Please.
that. I think all of our paths are unique, Jason, but they're also so very similar, aren't they? We all go through heartbreak. We all go through loss. We all go through tough times. We all go through rejection. We all go through abandonment. So everybody's story is unique, but it's also so very universal. It's unbelievable. I think that's one of the reasons why music, poetry, art is so far-reaching across cultures, across languages. And I think one of the things that becomes critical as you start to realize where you're at and what you need to do, that first thing is be aware of how blessed you are, right? Most of us take what we have for granted. Even in hard times, we're still living in a house. We still have food in our stomach. We're still warm. We're still in the winter. We're cool in the summer. We have a car. We have money in our wallet. We have so many things to be grateful for. So even in those hard times, be aware that there's always resources. And the thing that's really become very powerful for me is one of my favorite questions is, and for me it's God. I don't care whether people call it Allah, Buddha, Yahweh, doesn't matter. Where's God not?
Yeah.
And the answer is...
Spirit's everywhere. And I think
right.
that, to me, it's the creator. It depends on your worldview at the end of the day, right? But to me, God is everywhere if you're paying attention and if you're listening. It's a spirit within.
Yeah. Well, even if you're not paying attention and listening, he's still there.
That's
right.
true. That's
right?
true. Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. Once you start paying attention and listening, that's when the real magic happens.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to get across. Amen to that.
Yeah.
Well said. It's you touched on something, and not to make this show about me, but it was why I built this show and built Love Local in general, is because I was in the beginning of COVID interviewing local business owners, and I was seeing people from all different walks of life that normally might not talk to each other. And if you're listening to the news, they definitely wouldn't be talking to each other. But the roots of their stories were the same. And it was just what you just said. And I haven't heard too many people kind of come at it like that, but it's what inspired me to build Love Local and build whether it's the studio, the media agency, or my passion project, which is the Chicagoland piece, which is just like humanizing us as community members. It's so important, and as people, because we could think we're different, but we're really not. And the root causes are the same. So in my opinion, and in your opinion, it sounds like, so if we could lead with a helping hand, and we could help people, if we could share our stories, if we could get messages across, if we could lead with vulnerability, with humility, and we could support our brothers and sisters, like imagine what our communities could look like, imagine what our world could look like. But to me, it kind of starts at home first, and really realizing that for yourself, and that journey is different for everybody. But thank you for sharing. Do you think having to work harder in the beginning and go through those tough times in the beginning gave you something that can't be taught?
Yeah, without a doubt. I think that hardship, it's the heat that makes steel, right? You can't build something or strengthen something without going through some sort of crucible, a furnace, whatever you want to call it. And so, yeah, there's no
Darkness of sorts, right?
Well, yeah,
Is what you're saying?
yeah. The darkness, the struggles, the journey that is often difficult. But again, one of the things that happens through this thing called life is as you continue to win those battles, you build your self-confidence, you build your inner strength. One of the things I love to tell people is, explain to me one thing that you've worried about that's killed you. And when I've been speaking in front of an audience, I've had people fold their arms and then cock their head and they start thinking. And I'm like, look, you chucklehead, you've survived everything, right? But we continue to worry. And we're going to survive everything until the day we die, and then there's nothing to worry about anyways because you're dead. But without a doubt, those early stories, those early experiences, I think they shape all of us. And whether you take the good from it or the bad is where the rubber meets the road.
Yeah, well said. I have a friend, Carl, talks about the waves of life and being able to manage those waves of life. And to me, be able to sit in stillness in those waves of life because they're coming.
Right.
And everybody's story is unique, but to be able to continue to go and to have continue the right values through them, to have hope through them, because even if you're on the upward wave, eventually it's going to come down and you're going to get back to normal, but to continue to go, to see how you could continue to chisel yourself. What are you supposed to be learning during those tough times? What can you learn during those tough times that could help you be better as you continue to go through the waves of life? Because one thing for sure about life is there's waves. You call them something else, but there's ups and there's downs, there's peaks and there's valleys. When we talked, you talked a lot about learning to give yourself grace while you grow. And to me, that was insightful. And also it made me look at I think that's kind of the one reasons I kind of got out of it personally. It was that grace piece. And so I kind of want to dive into this a little bit and just really get your perception for our audience. Both of us talked about not having everything handed to us. How do you give yourself grace for the mistakes you made along the way?
So there's a couple of things I do. One of them is to what you just talked about and pointed back to, and that is I look at that experience and what went on, and I ask myself, what was the lesson to learn in there? And so I want to take away that lesson. The other thing is that there's a great saying I heard from Jack Canfield. Everybody's doing the best they can with what they know, with where they're at. So when I look back at who Louie used to be, I can look back with grace and forgive myself, because if I'd have known something better then, I would have done something better. But I didn't know anything better. And so I was doing the best I could with what I knew at the time. And this is one of the reasons why I'm so adamant about learning, reading, going to workshops, seminars, whether it's on business or spirituality, health and wellness, finance. Just put your brain into something that's going to grow you, because when you start down that path, it gets easier and easier to be clearer on looking back and saying, oh, I see what I did. I see what I was thinking. I can even see the emotion that triggered that. And now I can control that emotion, so the next time it happens, I'm not going to have the same response. And that's when we become the master of our destiny.
Yeah, wow, Louie. Yeah, wow. That should be a short clip right there. That is just truly insightful, and I think that's kind of what it's about at the end of the day. And thank you for sharing that. When did you start realizing, we talked about forgiveness too in all this, when did you start realizing that forgiveness, not proving yourself, was where real strength came from?
I realized that probably in my 40s, because one of the things, that, I know you know this, Jason, but for the audience, one of the things that we both know is that when you're busy hating anybody or anything, the person you're hurting the most is yourself, right? And so I was badly abused at the hands of 3 different women as a boy. And so one of the things, and both of these came to me in meditation. The first thing that came to me in meditation to help me forgive, specifically my mother. My mother walked out when I was in the 4th grade and never came back. Oh. I mean, never. Walked out of the courtroom. My dad got custody of us. But the first thing I had to realize was that it had nothing to do with me. If you would have been my mother's son, she would have walked out on you too. When God gave me that awareness, I realized, wow, I didn't do anything wrong. There was nothing wrong with me. I didn't do anything wrong. That made it the first step possible to start forgiving her, because she would have done the same thing to you. The second thing that happened was I was given the awareness that somebody had to mess her up pretty bad for her to walk out on her kids and never come back. And when I tell my story, especially to women who've got children, they can't fathom the thought, and even fathers can't fathom the thought of just walking out on their children and never coming back. So when I got there, I realized somebody along the line, whether they physically beat her, whether she was sexually abused, whatever that was, and again, she was doing the best she could with what she knew with where she was at. But once I realized those two things, it had nothing to do with me, and somebody had, hurt people hurt people.
Yeah.
And so somebody hurt her, and she hadn't broken the cycle. She hadn't figured it out. And I don't know if she ever did, but I realized all of it had nothing to do with me, and I could forgive her, and I could give her grace, and I could get on with my life.
That's beautiful. It's part of being a human is trauma. It's just everybody has it. Some are worse than others. It sounds like what your mother went through was pretty horrific. Sounds like what you went through is pretty horrific in many of our eyes that haven't experienced things like that. But to be able to break the cycle and focus in on healing, and the part of the healing is the forgiveness piece of it, so that we can break cycles. Me and my wife talk about, like, this generation, everything came really transparent. So we're able to learn a lot more than previous generations have. So if we could focus in on, like, fixing our traumas, working on doing that inner work as humans, giving ourselves grace, we could heal and we could grow. I think we could do it better than we ever have if we want to. And that's going to be the piece that everybody's going to have that journey on their own. But to be able to have grace for others that maybe have caused you trauma is so important. But to also, like, fix your traumas. And to me, for me specifically, one of mine was grace and forgiveness. And I think that's a big piece of why it's in here, is because those helped heal me and allow me to continue to go forward. It sounds like you had your own experience with that has helped shape you to who you're at today, but also to help you lead others. Because if you didn't have that forgiveness, you would still be carrying that, right? It'd be heavy in whatever way. It would probably come out in other ways. So, like, you got to do that internal work. So I think it's beautiful that you did, and I think it's beautiful that you're helping lead others now with what you're doing with your leadership stuff, or even with the Gifted Leader podcast, to be able to help implement those things. Because I don't know if everybody can. Everybody's journey is different, but in my mind, I think they can. Let me say this: I don't know if everybody wants to, or if everybody even knows how to. So I think having somebody like you that has gone through, let's just say, the ringer, and I mean that respectfully, to come out and to say that, I hope that it could inspire our community to be able to be like, well, I have a little work to do too, or I have to forgive, or I have to do this. Because when we carry those things, life is not as joyful as it can be when we release them. Right?
No, without a doubt.
Yeah. What advice do you give leaders or parents who are still carrying old wounds but are trying to build something better?
Seek healing in as many places as possible. I think that there's so many, and you held up your phone earlier. There are a lot of modalities. I'm a Reiki master. I do a lot of things in my life, but there's so many modalities out there. There's sacrocranial, which is very powerful. There's massage, there's exercise, there's meditation, there's yoga. I mean, there's acupuncture. The list goes on and on and on. But there are many ways to get rid of or release the trauma from your body. I would highly recommend a book called Your Body Keeps the Score.
I've read that before, yeah.
Yeah, very powerful book for your listeners. And I'd like to also touch on something that I think that came to me in a meditation as well, Jason. And you mentioned this just a minute ago. I don't believe that anybody's trauma is greater or better or bigger or worse than somebody else's, right? If I had my childhood, it was nowhere near what most people went through. But if you had a cat, Fluffy, and cat was with you your whole life since you were born, and then at the age of 12 or 13, Fluffy dies. Who am I to say that that's more traumatic or less traumatic than what I went through?
Totally.
Right? And when we want to make our story more or less of something, we're living in the story. Right? If I want to make my story bigger than yours or worse than yours, I'm focusing on the wrong stuff. I really need to be focusing on the fact that I can heal, and sometimes I'll be able to help you heal either with the example that I've led or sometimes with wisdom that I've learned. And you touched on something else too. We all have the ability to do it. The $39 question is, do you have the desire to do it?
Yeah, and it's going to be hard. I think at the end of the day, it's for everybody, and I think that's a really valid point on this. Is each of our journeys are different and unique. To compare your journey to somebody else's journey or how that made you feel is not fair to you or to that other person. And to me, I look at when I see comparison or when I have compared in my life, and it's more of a kind of a thing that really slows progress and allows us to be able to go to that next level, because I'm not you, you're not me, and that goes for everybody else that's out there. Our hearts are uniquely made. So when we try to compare our trauma to somebody else's, it's just not fair to either of you. And at the end of the day, it's about fixing our own trauma so that we could show up better for people. Me and you've talked about serving and leading from a servant mindset and with a loving mindset. You can't really do that if you're broken within and if you're comparing with other people. There's going to be roadblocks that you face.
So I'm sorry to interrupt, but you just touched on something, and that's one of the reasons why there are leaders that rise to position, whether it's in business, sports. You and I and Ben were kind of joking about the NBA before we started, but and in religious organizations where people rise to these leadership roles, where people are looking up to them, but they haven't done the work, and then they do silly stuff, right? And that's because they didn't take the time to work on themselves.
Yeah, they're focused on the title or getting to that position or what it looks like or whatever it is. But at the end of the day, if you're not fixing yourself, you're not going to be the best for the people that are around you, right?
That's exactly correct.
Yeah. We talked a lot about our core values and being able to find your direction. And we touched on it a little bit earlier in the show, but finding joy in any storm and being able to go through that. You were U.S. Marine, and I have, for one, thank you for your service. I think that's courageous in its own right. And to me, I wasn't able to serve in the military because of a heart defect, but I could tell you that it's something that I admire for people. You sign your name on the dotted line to be able to serve your country, to be able to work collectively and collaboratively with other men and women to make sure that us as Americans could know what it's like to be free. My father used to always talk about, you don't know, like he's been to other countries. He's like, you don't even know how lucky you have it in comparison to other countries. So I've always come from a place of just immense gratitude for people that serve. And as I've gotten older and I see the character that's in a lot of the people that I've served and the selfless heart that comes from that, it really just makes me want to do and really pull stories out from veterans and get messages out there that I think our community could gather from and that they could grow from that maybe haven't served. And I think that's important. So what core values from your time in the Marines still guide you today as a business owner and as a leadership coach?
There's two that jump right to the top. One of them is love, and the second one is integrity. I think that it was amazing to me the bonds and the friendships that were built, and I don't know that they could be built that way unless they were under those circumstances, right? The stress of combat and the things that we existed in and lived through, and so, but there was a great love. Right, we had this great love for each other, and it was amazing because I think that there's a lot of people that think there's a lot of people in the military that are warmongers or they want to go kill somebody, and that's not so much the case as that the training you go through and living together and being isolated like in in foreign lands and those kinds of things. Like your father, I was around a lot of places around the world. When you're in that situation, it builds relationships that last lifetimes. I'm blessed. I know some Marines that I served with when I was 18 that are still in my life today.
It's beautiful.
It is a beautiful thing. And the other thing is integrity. One of the things that they teach you early on is that everybody's counting on you, right? And you're counting on everybody else. And I like the analogy of a chain. You're a link in the chain, and you've got to be your best and your strongest because you don't want to be the weakest link. And you also, because of this bond in these friendships, and it's true love. And it's a crazy thing because when I was younger, we felt it, we knew it, but as young men who were a lot of ego, a lot of hard charging, this and that, we wouldn't often tell each other, but we sure expressed it in weird ways and funny ways. But that true love that was at the base of all that, and then that they went hand in hand with the integrity.
Yeah. It's your community at the end of the day.
Right,
community,
without a doubt.
Yeah, and you talked about the chain piece, and I think about what if we just took that approach in our local communities right now? If we just supported each other, we helped each other, we picked each other up, and we took some of those values that you learn in service, and we added them to our, added them into our communities. And we came at things from that approach. And to me, I'm like, our communities would change, our world would change, because when there's love, when there's integrity, when there's a want to have another person's back and to be able, whether they're, I talk to people that are like, I had completely different views than people I served with. But when we're on the battlefield, we had each other's back, and nothing else mattered. And I just think about that, even in this day and age of there's so much division that's out there, that it's what if we can just start helping each other? What if we could just start rooting each other on and want what's best for each other? What could our world look like?
Well, and I think so here's something really interesting. The thing that was at the core of all of that for us in the military was a servant heart. Right, to your point, everybody signed their name on a dotted line, right? And even in training, in peacetime, people in the military die. Mm-hmm. So it was real world, real risk on a daily basis. And so, but everybody had a servant heart. And I'd like to share something with you. I was on the phone call with a friend of mine this morning, and she said, what are you expecting back from this? I said, nothing. And yesterday I was at the high school helping with mock interviews, and I mentor high school kids. And what I've come to understand is that when we pour into the community, I don't look for the community specifically to have it come back to me. Mm-hmm. But I've come to understand life's a boomerang, right? Whatever you put out is coming back, but it's going to probably come back somewhere else in a different way.
Totally.
So if I'm busy loving you, or if I give you a ride home, or whatever it may be, I'm not looking for anything back from that. Right? That's what I consider unconditional love. Mm-hmm. I don't have any strings attached to it. Even in romantic relationships, there's a lot of conditional love. I'll love you if, I'll love you but. And that's not unconditional love. And I was blessed with beautiful grandchildren, and they still are, as grown-ups, we still love each other unconditionally. And so I think that one of the secrets of life for me is whatever you put out is coming back to you, but it's probably not going to come back to the source that you put it out mm-hmm. to. And that's okay. And it might not come back today, it might not come back tomorrow, but it's coming back.
Yeah, it's what you put into the world is what you get out of it.
Right.
And I think that's very well said. And I feel like, sometimes people do stuff or don't do stuff because they're not going to get anything back. And I just go well, you're missing out on what life could be.
Right.
Because if you just lead with love on a daily basis and do the right thing for the things that come in front of you, the world just becomes abundant and things work out. And to me, it's a little bit different, but I hear a pay it forward mentality. If I show you love and respect and I take you home because you got a flat tire or whatever that case would be, or that you dropped off your car at your auto body shop and now you got to give somebody a ride home. You might not get that back directly from that person, but if that person goes out and does something nice for another person, there's no way that reciprocalness doesn't come back to us as humans if we more take that approach. I feel like that's like an old school type value that we need back in our society. And I hope it's not old school. I hope I just don't see it as often as I used to. But that's something to me, like, if we just love with people, if we just support people, if we just do the right thing because it's in front of us, well, like, if we all do that, like, there's no way this stuff doesn't come back to us and lead to more abundance here on earth.
Well, and I agree with that, Jason. And the other thing that I think that's really huge about that is when you give from that place, if you're truly giving with no expectation of anything back, it's a wonderful feeling. I'm going to share a story that I don't talk about, and I've never told this story publicly, but I think you've inspired me to share it. I had a dear friend of mine, and it was one of those things I knew the whole family. I knew her, her husband, and their 2 daughters. And she was diagnosed with lung cancer. And her and an older lady that we both knew from church would often, about once a month, we get together for lunch. Well, when Penny was diagnosed with lung cancer, she had always wanted a convertible in her life, but she never had one. And so her oldest daughter came to me. Her oldest daughter was Heather, came to me and said, I'm taking Mom up to Lake Geneva for about 4 days. We're going to rent wave runners and a pontoon boat. We're going to lay on the beach, and we're just going to go have a great time. It was the middle of the summer. And so I told Heather, I said, look, I want to do something, but you can't tell your mom. And she says, what? And I said, I'm going to rent you guys a convertible. Now, her husband could have done it. It was in his financial wheelhouse to do it. I said, I'm going to rent you guys a convertible. And this, if I choke up, it's because it still touches me. And so I rented them a convertible, and they went up there, and they had a great time. On the way back, the first stop they made was Sharp Auto Body. And they came in, and so I asked Penny, I said, Penny, how was it? And she says, oh, it was just the best 4 days I've had in so long. And she said, and you know what my best part was, my favorite part? I said, no, Penny, what was it? She said, it was riding around in a convertible with the top down, with the sun on my face and the wind in my hair. And she didn't survive. And she went to her grave, and I gave her that gift, and she never knew I gave it to her. Yeah. And it was the most beautiful thing, because it didn't matter if she knew. What mattered was that she felt the wind and the sun, and that experience was something that she treasured until the day she took her last breath. That's unconditional love. Yeah,
we can help people win. We don't need the words for it.
No.
It's about helping people experience the best opportunity to live a joyful life, especially in a storm that she was going through. That's to me, that's a very very much a way of, like, how can we give, like, as neighbors, as community members, as friends, as family members, how can we give without wanting anything in return? What can we do to make that person's day? And to hear that story, like, it takes me back, and it definitely a servant leader type mindset, but it's also like, well, it's really the little things in life that are the most important. The sun and the wind, and listen to some good tunes with the convertible down, like, that feels good.
Right.
Know? Yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny because I tell people all the time, you don't have to be Mother Teresa or Gandhi to change the world. You change the world by hugging somebody. You change the world by smiling at somebody. You change the world by telling them, hey, I really like your dress, or that's a great shirt and tie. It's simple things, and we can do it all day long. And what's fascinating for me is that when I live in that place, it really creates the energy to want to do it again and again.
Yeah, because there's an abundance piece that comes from it.
Yeah, and there's a blessing on both sides, right?
Yes, yeah.
There's a blessing on both sides.
Absolutely. It feels good. It feels good in your heart. It feels good in your soul. Amen. Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
Next question. For someone who feels off course or maybe stuck, lost, whatever that would be, how can they begin identifying their own values and using them like a compass to get back on track, in your opinion?
There's a really good question. So when somebody's stuck and they're off course, the first thing to do is just move. Go do something, go do anything. Go exercise, go for a drive. Just get out of that mindset of I'm stuck. The other thing is that this is fascinating because we're about to come full circle. When you look back on your life, there's been the ups and the downs. You call them the waves, right? Mm-hmm. Look back on your life and look at the waves. And when you were doing your best or when you were happiest, what was important to you in that time? It might have been friendship. It might have been that you were working consistently, you put in a hard day's work. There's a lot to be said about putting in a good hard day's work, right? Physical labor. Mm-hmm. But look back on those good times, because in those good times, your core values were at the top. That what you were doing, who you were busy being in that moment were your core values. This stuff isn't hard. People make it a lot harder than it needs to be. Mm-hmm. One of the things I share, and you've been doing this the whole time, is touching your heart. I share with people, life isn't hard. And a lot of people want to push back. Yes, it is, Louie, blah, blah. Okay, you believe whatever you want to believe. You get to find whatever you're looking for. If you believe life is hard, you're going to go find life is hard.
Yes.
But it's really simple. If you're happy, you're on course. If you're unhappy, you're off course. And so if you're stuck, you're off course. So go do something. Just get into movement, get into action of some sort. And one of the best things you can do when you're stuck is go volunteer.
Yeah.
Go volunteer.
Give, right?
You're right. Go volunteer.
Yeah.
For a couple reasons. One, it's going to make you realize, holy cow, there's a lot of people out there who have it a lot worse than I do. And the other thing is some of the best networking and lifelong relationships, business friends I've ever developed, I met them volunteering.
Yeah. Amen. I think that's absolutely great advice, and I think it leads with that servant type mindset, right? And even when you're going through a hard time, to be able to serve without wanting anything in return, to me, I can speak from my own perception, it's very healing. Mm-hmm. And it's healing within. It's not anything that is outward bound, but there's a healing that occurs when you just get to go give. You get to go serve. You get to go help somebody's day be better, whatever that is. You help somebody open the door and smile at them at a Starbucks, whatever that thing is. Mm-hmm. But if you stay in that stuck space, it gets more stuck, and you don't continue to kind of chisel upwards.
Right?
What are you gonna say?
Well, I was just going to say, it repeats because it's the energy of the negative thought creates the energy that creates another negative thought, and it just becomes the cycle. And anything that you do to take action to get moving mm-hmm. is going to break that cycle of negative thought, negative energy.
Yeah, amen. Last question of this segment, then we'll jump on to the next. You said in our conversation prepping for this, if you're unhappy, you're off course. So you touched a little bit on that there, but how can people use that simple idea to make better decisions in life and or leadership?
So that's a great question. I think one of the things when it comes to decision making, you want to have a sense of your values and then hold every decision up to your values. So my top 3 core values are integrity, love, and fun. And so am I living in my integrity if I do this? Am I being loving if I make this decision? Is this decision fun? Am I going to be happy with this decision? And so having core values is very, very powerful because it becomes your North Star, your guiding compass. And then when you have a decision to make, you just hold it up against those core values. And I would add, this is the importance of goals, right? And knowing where you want to go, what you want to accomplish in your life. Because at that point, and everything, you put a post out on social media. For me, it's not even about the line so much as it's just the playing field, mm-hmm. right? And every move we make is doing only one of 2 things. It's either getting us closer to where we want to go, or it's getting us further away. There's no in between. And so, is this decision going to get me closer to where I want to go? If the answer is yes, then it's a good decision. If the answer is no, I'd make another decision.
Yeah, well said. I think the times we're in now, it's a cycle of history and we for politics, for government, for religion, for everything, for technology. There's a revolution that is happening with obviously the internet. You look at this thing came into play in 2005, 2006 when we obviously started getting these social networks where we were really connected. That has continued to evolve. We are a growing species that is evolving very rapidly with technology, and to me, there's this sense out there now where people are quick to label, quick to assume, and really slow to listen. And that has me really nervous for not just this generation, but the next generation. I think this algorithm could be very dangerous, especially when it's continuing to feed us our own biases and stereotypes, but we're not focusing on listening to the other people. And I've experienced and I've seen hate on social media. I see it continuing to evolve sometimes into our communities. And it makes me really sad. And from leadership standpoints, I feel like you have brought so much to the table here. I see what you're doing with the Gifted Leader podcast. I see what you're doing as you build out your personal brand on social media. And to me, I'm like, well, what can we learn? And from this conversation to look to build win-wins. Because right now is a pretty crazy time in history. And I think getting out of ourselves and understanding that it's something bigger than us and maybe developing some leadership type practices to be able to help us be better for people that we agree with, but especially the people that we disagree with. Those are humans too. I think we could agree on this. They are made in God's image just like we are. And we are all, sinners at the end of the day, and none of us are perfect. So I want to kind of talk about leading in divisive times, and I asked you that you take your life's experience into this. Your whether it's growing up, whether it's being in the military, whether it's learning and growing along the way with continuous self-development. Because when I talk to you, you haven't stopped learning and growing since the day you were born, and you ain't stopping anytime soon, which is inspiring to me for somebody that hasn't been on this journey as long as you. And I think that we could learn something from what you could give us to be able to help lead better in divisive times. For you, what does strong leadership look like when emotions and opinions are at an all-time high?
Boy, that's a really good question. So there's a couple of things. I have a couple of thoughts on it. One of them is that I think great leaders are the ones that move. And I'd like to explain that. One of the things I do when I speak in front of a room full of people, and often I'll do this on team, they've brought me in to speak on team building, I'll ask for 5 volunteers. And I'll have one person stand in the middle of the stage. I'll have one person stand to their right, to their left. I'll have somebody stand behind them. I'll have somebody stand in front of them. And then I ask the person in front of them, how many eyes do they have? The person in front of them is going to say, they have 2 eyes. Person behind them says, they have no eyes. Person on the right, I asked them, how many eyes do they have? They say, 1. I said, which side of their head's it on? It's on the right side. Person over here, I ask them, how many eyes do they have? 1. Which side's it on? The left side. And then I look at the audience and I say, who's right? They're all right. And they will all fight to the death. They will all fight to the death because they're sure that their viewpoint is the only thing that's possible. Great leaders move. Great leaders will come. So if there was, I could hold up a business card in between us, and I could hold up the gifted leader on your side, and it's blank on my side. You're going to swear that it says a gifted leader. I'm going to swear it says nothing. Great leaders move. So I'm not going to count on or expect you to move. I'm going to move and come stand next to you. I'm going to put my shoulder next to your shoulder, and I'm going to look out in the world, and then I'm going to do what you said. I'm going to shut up, and I'm going to listen. And I'm not going to listen to have an answer. I'm going to listen to understand. Big Stephen Covey principle. I'm going to listen to understand how you see this thing. Yeah. The other thing I'm going to do is before I engage in that, and you talked about in these emotional and divisive times, I want everybody in your audience to catch this because it's so hugely powerful. You cannot reason with anybody when they're in their emotional mind. If you've got a family, if you're leading a sports team, you're a coach, you're a business leader, you're a manager somewhere, and everybody's a leader in my book, you can't get to some sort of resolution or even agree to disagree when somebody's emotional because they're literally out of their analytical mind. You have to let that decompress and cool off and then come back at it. So that when in emotional divisive times, as a leader, and you might have to be, as the leader, you have to realize, and a big part of what I believe, 65% of your growth is awareness. So I'm aware that I've been triggered and you said something that's made me mad. As a leader, it's my responsibility to get away from this situation till I calm myself down. You might still be perfectly calm. I'm gonna back this thing up. I'm gonna slow it down. I might say, let's take a break. Let's come back at this tomorrow. And then when we come back at it tomorrow, I'm gonna stand next to you and see if I can look out at the world where you're coming from. I think those two things will help us over the emotion and the divisiveness. And I'll say one last thing. When we talk about hate and unforgiveness, right? Because right now, everybody, if you're this, then somebody hates you, right? If this side says black, this side says white, and then this side says, well, you know, I think you're right. We agree white, no black. And I could, if I can, and I'll say it, I believe whether you're hating Brussels sprouts or broccoli or Trump or Biden or Kamala, you're peeing in our pool. You're putting negative energy into our pool, and we're all swimming in the same pool. Mm-hmm. And we will continue to be swimming in the same pool. And I heard something recently that's probably very apropos for this conversation. History doesn't repeat itself. Mankind does. Mm-hmm. And we've learned, and this is one of the things, today I'll kill anything. There's a spider in my house, I catch it with a Kleenex, and I let it go outside. Because I've realized wars never solved anything.
No.
And here's one of the other things that I learned. My dad was in the Army in World War II. He was captured at the Battle of the Bulge. He spent time in a German prison camp. At some point, the government told us to hate the Germans. Then they told us to hate the Russians. And then they told us to hate the Koreans. And then they told us to hate the Japanese. And then they told us to hate the Arabs. And then they told us to hate the Muslims. Somebody's always telling somebody to hate somebody. It's insane. And war's never solved anything, and it's never going to.
No. And, it's very profound. I never heard somebody say, I think I say history repeats itself, but you're right. It's actually man and humans that continue to repeat themselves and to show our weaknesses over and over again throughout the cycle of history. Until we could fix that, we're going to continue to see cycles of history repeat themselves. And to me, there's a lot of change that's happening in our world right now. And it's been happening. And I talked a little bit about it earlier, like the internet, we're connected. We get to search for things. We get to shop for things. We get to do this. And then the smartphone, the social networks, all these sorts of things. I feel like we're in this very transparent time that we're getting to learn about each other. And none of us are perfect. And then you look at man, do what men do, and I don't mean men as just men, but humans, and you see us repeating some of the same things that have happened in the past, because we're not coming, in my opinion, not all coming from a place of love. And if I personally believe if we come from a place of love, that we could shape our world with the tools like artificial intelligence, blockchain, et cetera, to be this abundant place. But unless we're able to look in, and if we are feeling angry, if we're feeling hateful, if we're scrolling and we're seeing ourselves upset and frustrated, unless we could take ourselves back and understand where that comes from, I don't know. I don't know if we could get through this in a positive way, and that makes me really sad. And the fight or flight is up in these social media algorithms. I feel like and what I don't know from people, but I don't know if people like really understand that, like, what's with this new technology, with our of being in a country that allows us to have freedom of speech, and with people to be able to also still manipulate things, and because humans are humans, governments are governments, whatever that is, there's not a lot of perfect in there. I think we're not going to realize that the time that we're in right now is, to me, I look back at like the 2010s to 2014-ish time frames when like these bots started coming in into our society and into these social platforms. You heard a lot about it, probably within the last 5 to 10 years, you've heard about these bots. And these bots would go into these social platforms, and if you said it was gray, they would say it was blue. And if you said if it was, the coffee cup was black and I say it's red, they were going back and forth, and there was this division. Well, in the 2014, 2016, 2017 area, there's a lot of regulation that happened around that, and these social platforms found out that there was a lot of holes in their system to be able to allow these bots to be able to come into our society and to be able to help spread divide, in my opinion. Well, I feel like, I'm sure the bots are still there, but I feel like that they kind of just got us going. and we started kind of going at it with each other. I've gone viral on social media with stuff that wasn't intended to cause division, but more to share my beliefs and to see the hate, to see the negativity, to see the assumptions that people make without understanding the other side is kind of scary to me. And you watch one news channel, you get one thing. You watch another news channel, you get another thing. To your point, we both think we're right. We all think we're right. And I'm getting to the point of where I'm trying to get to is I think we need to get out of our algorithms, and we need to get back into our communities. We need to be able to build relationships with our neighbors and to talk to people that are different than us. Because what I've seen from getting hate and negativity directed directly at me is that they don't understand me because I am a unique soul, and they're trying to put me into a box that they've seen on this algorithm or on their media station. And none of us are meant to fit into a box. We all have different views and different opinions, and that's why it's important to be able to listen to each other, to understand each other, to ask questions and to not judge. At the end of the day, we're all trying to do the best we can. And if we are just trying to prove our point, which I see on social media a lot, instead of seeking to understand, seeking to build win-wins, how are we really going to be able to build a better tomorrow? And I don't know that answer, but I hope is that, to me, it starts at home. It's doing some of that internal work to understand where that rage comes from when you're upset, or that frustration comes from, or to maybe realize that, like, maybe my viewpoint or what I saw, maybe it's not right. I wonder what Louie thinks about this. We have a difference of opinion. I'm gonna go talk to him because the hate and the anger that is coming from within our society is like just not healthy at all. And it could mess up this generation, and it could also mess up future generations, not just the next one. And that makes me really sad as an American, as a human, that's our cycle of history. Like, can we be better than this? Can we listen to each other? Can we go out and can we connect with each other again? And we, do good things for each other. And I hope we could get out of this time frame with like learning about ourselves, learning about other people, to realize that most of us want to do good in our world. But unless we focus in on building win-wins and listening to people that might have a different view than you or a different perception than you, it makes me really sad for what the future could look like.
So I'd like to challenge a couple things that you've said.
Do it.
The first one is, what if you're perfect right now? Mm-hmm. What if everybody's perfect right now, right here, the way they're supposed to be? What if it's part of the plan? Right? And what if my difference of opinion, that I love Italian food and you love Mexican food, what if that's to teach us patience? What if that's to teach us understanding? What if that's to teach us how to communicate and live together? Would
that start from within? I'd love that thought process, but
what if I'm perfect? And I don't mean that I'm never not going to make mistakes. I'm just, in this big plan. When you think about the universe, right, and the universe working in the mystical, magical ways it does, right? If we were any closer to the sun, we'd burn up. If we were any further away, we'd freeze to death. But we're right where we need to be able to exist and live for decades, centuries, millennium. What if everything's perfect right here the way it is? And you touched on something that I think is just the root of everything. At the root of everything, Jason, is just the choice between love and fear. And that's it. And everything you can drill down to that, right? If we're going to be open to communicating, then we're coming from a place of love. If I've got to be right at all costs, then I'm afraid of something. And there's nothing to be afraid of. The planet is abundant. There's so much money on the planet, you can't count it all.
No.
There are so many leaves on the planet, you can't count them. Birds, I could go on for the rest of pebbles of sand on the beach, drops of water, volumes of air. The planet is abundant. What if it's all perfect right here the way it's supposed to be? And this is our opportunity, because what happens, I want to make sure everybody in the audience, they might not have heard this, but there's an old man walking down a beach. And I'm sure you've heard this story. There's an old man walking down a beach, and he comes up across a little boy, and all these starfish have washed up on the beach. And this little boy picks up a starfish and he throws it in. And the old man says to the little boy, he said, "Little boy, there's no way you're going to make a difference." Little boy picks up one more starfish and throws it back in the ocean. Little boy says, "I made a difference to that one." And this goes back to what did you do today? Did you make a positive difference? I believe there's a lot more positive going on in the world than the negative, but all they do is magnify the negative all day long. And if that's all you're listening to, if that's all you're watching, start reading some autobiographies, right? Go watch some true stories that are feel-good movies about people that did some stuff. I just watched a true story movie about a black female golfer in the 40s and 50s, and she overcame all kinds of discrimination and obstacles, and became this world famous, literally globally world famous golfer. There is a lot more good going on in the world than there is bad, but they're magnifying the bad, and that's all people are focusing on. We could go out today and we could find so many feel-good stories that happened just this day, but nobody's talking about that. Nobody focuses on that. But again, pick up one starfish and throw it in. You said it before. Say hi to somebody at the Starbucks. One of my favorite things to do is I don't buy fast food, but I'll go through I get tea. So I'll go through and I'll just pay for whoever's behind me. I'll never know who they are. They'll never know me. It's not the point. But there's little things like that, and I love to think about it. And right now, what are you and I doing? And I want your audience to really just stop and think about this. Wherever your wife is at right now, can you find the boundary for where your love for her starts or stops?
No.
And you can't find the boundary for her love for you, wherever she's at in the world right now, you can't find the boundary for that love either. And so right now in this room, you and I and Ben, we're just loving each other. Well, that's rippling across the universe. And the more we do that, the more ripples we have of the light, the love. We're going to turn the tide on this thing called the darkness, called this craziness. We have the power to change it.
Yeah, it's if we lead with love, we could get through this darkness and we could get to a light like we've never seen before.
Amen.
And but it's about love. And if people are feeling fearful, or if they're only listening to one side and not and being hateful to the other side, I ask those people to look in, because we're better together. We're better, and we don't have to agree. My father always says, and I keep repeating this, but I take this with me as I go on to my day. If we're all thinking the same, none of us are really thinking, because we're all made in a unique way. But to come from a place of like, it's okay if somebody has a difference of opinion, but hate shouldn't be okay. Living in fear of something because it's being fed to you. Our audience hears this a lot too. Like, if you're only on social media and everything's just coming into you, like, when are you sitting in stillness to allow what's coming from your heart? And if you're not sitting in stillness and you're not listening to what's coming from your heart, and you're just living in this constant like inward type movement where things are being fed to you, and it's fear-based, because that's kind of what's a part of all this. We're never going to get to our true essence, but we're never going to see what this world could be. And I think that in this time in history, I hope and pray every day that we could get through this darkness so that we could have and get to the light. Because with us working on our inner selves, with us giving grace for ourselves, giving grace for others, for forgiving, for loving ourselves, for loving our neighbor. If we could do those things along with like tools like artificial intelligence, with tools like blockchain, we could live in this really beautiful world. And we could create something that's so much more abundant than what we've seen on this world. But if we continue to come from hate, if we continue to come, which I agree with you, it could definitely stem from fear or some type of scarcity mindset. Instead of love, we're going to be screwed. And we're not going to get to where we could truly get to in life.
But I think, I think that when we focus on the big picture, it seems overwhelming. What we need to do is, so you said something earlier that I'd like to touch on, and if your audience, I'm not hard to find, I'm out there all over, but if your audience wants to reach out to me, there's a thing called the mirror exercise, because what we need to do is start loving ourselves first.
Yes.
And so if I'm hating on you, I haven't done much self-work, and I haven't worked on being a better me. Because if I love me unconditionally, there's no way I'm going to hate you or anybody else.
Yeah.
Because I know the first person I'm hurting the most is me.
Wow.
But you don't know that if you're unaware and if you haven't done some work. But I've got a thing called the mirror exercise that will change people's mindset and their relationship with themselves. Because I believe I am perfect in that I was supposed to be bald. I was supposed to need glasses. My ears are right where they're supposed to be. The whole shebang. And for what my mission in this thing called life is, my body's exactly the right size. I'm not too big. I'm not too short. I'm not too skinny. I'm not too fat. And so is everybody else.
Yeah.
Right? But it all starts with self-love. Because if I'm busy loving me, there's no way I can hate anything else.
Yeah, amen. We're all uniquely made, and when we get to our true essence of ourselves, that's where the beauty happens in any storm and anything that you're in life. So well said, Louie, and thank you for that. Thank you. What are some practical ways, in your opinion, leaders can build bridges when it feels like a lot of people and a lot of things in our society are trying to be able to build walls amongst each other?
That's really easy for me. Go first. Set the example, right? If you want to build a bridge, be the one that puts out your hand. Be the one that reaches down to pick somebody up, to lift them up. Be the one. I have a really simple prayer in the morning. And I got it out of a book called A Course in Miracles. I asked God, where would you have me go? What would you have me do? What would you have me say, and to whom? Use me today and send me at least one person to help, heal, or serve.
Yeah, you're a vessel is what I hear.
Well, right.
Yeah.
And so at that point, and I've experienced that so many times when I just feel the Spirit move through me, but it's because I'm volunteering to be used as the instrument. Mother Teresa said, I'm the pencil in God's hand. I love that. And I'm the pencil in God's hand. And every day I ask God, write a love song, write a poem, and send me one person. Every day, at least one person every day shows up and I get to help them.
Yeah, that reminds me of a song that I enjoy. There's a line that says, we aren't the artist, we're the canvas. And, right. But it comes from the heart. And well said. And
let me, I'll to piggyback on that, one of my favorite sayings is, I'm a speaker sometimes, but I'm a messenger always. And so at that point, what's your message that you're putting out today? We are vibrating and generating and communicating things even when we're not talking. So who you being? Who you busy being?
Yeah. And who are you busy being? If we can't do that, if we haven't done that inner work, it's really hard to understand who we're busy being.
Well, you're not aware of who you're busy being because you're still reacting.
Yeah.
Right? It goes bang, bang.
Yeah, well said. How do you personally stay grounded and listen when you disagree with somebody?
So one of the things I do is I breathe. The other thing I do is I'm actually certified in mindfulness. And one of the things I do is I just practice mindfulness. I become very aware of my body in the moment. Like right now, I can feel the weight of my body in the chair. I'm aware of my shoes, my feet in my shoes, my feet on the floor, my hands, the temperature of the air. I become very present right in this moment. And then what I do is I highly recommend if somebody's talking, when they're done talking, you take a breath, because most of the time they're not done talking, they're just taking a breath. The other thing is that listen with the intention to hear and understand, not to answer, right? Most of us are listening. When somebody's talking, we're already starting to think, well, that's wrong, or I'm going to say this, or I want to do that, whatever that may be. Listen to hear what they're saying, to really take it in, and then when they're done talking, take a breath. If they keep going, then let them go. At some point, they're going to stop. And when they're done, take another breath before you say what you're going to say. And think about, and I love your mindset win-win. What can I say? I don't agree with you, but what can I say that's not going to be offensive or combative, that's going to get us someplace of some sort of unity or some sort of collaboration or some sort of understanding that we might not ever agree, but we can still live in peace.
Yeah, and be good, still be good to each other, right? At the end of the day.
And this becomes a practice. This isn't easy. We all struggle with it. I still struggle with it.
Yeah.
But it's a practice. It's a muscle we can build.
I feel like I see people out there now on social media. It's like they have to be, and not just social media, but just people that think differently. It's like they're waiting to prove their point. And they're waiting so they're not really listening to kind of what your point is. If you're waiting just to respond, but you're not seeking to understand that person's perception and their point of view, and you're assuming things along the way because you just want to answer your point, man, it's gonna hurt. It's not good.
Well, and I call it right fighting.
Yeah.
Right. I'm gonna right fight to the death to prove that I'm right and you're wrong at all costs.
Yeah, I see people that do that, and then I also feel sometimes that people will use that, but they'll also use like a bullying technique where they kind of come right at you with it, and it's to prove their point, but it's a bullying tactic, and it's to. It breaks my heart when I see that happen. When it happens to me, I kind of like chuckle because I have a very strong sense of self for some of the reasons that we've talked about earlier. But it's almost like we breathe and just relax. And where does that come from, man? Where does that anger come from? That
fear.
Yeah,
it's all coming from fear of some sort.
And I hope and pray that people go work on that fear and focus in on love, because those not listening to people, assuming and putting judgment on people, especially putting people in boxes, is just like, stop. None of us we're all uniquely made. And if we could all fix our own thing within us to be able to help us be the best person we could be, this world is abundant. But if we're hateful, if we're angry, if we're bullying, if we're not listening to understand, but we're listening to answer, like, that's the work that you need to do to fix your brokenness. It's nothing on the outside, my friend. That's something you need to fix. Mm-hmm. And I hope we're in this middle of this self-revolution where people could focus in on themselves and focus in on learning to lead, learning best practices like you're talking about, giving grace to themselves, because we're all kind of hot messes. But if we're angry in those hot messes and we're portraying it onto others, that's just not fair to society. So, like, fix your shit, just to put it bluntly.
Right.
Yeah. Next question, the last out of this one, but I appreciate this conversation. I know it's going long, but to me, when I knew that we could do this and having this conversation and seeing the things that we're both posting, I feel like we're coming from a place of wanting to build bigger tables in a way and to be able to create those win-wins. If our community could do one thing right now to be better, what would you say it could be?
I think the one thing that would have the biggest impact the fastest for the community is to just start practicing patience and understanding. I think that we're all, and to your point, you keep holding up your phone. One of the things I would suggest is turn your phone off on Sundays.
Yes.
Just take a day off from your phone. And again, we've become a society, and I've got a couple years on you, but right now we've gotten to a place where when I was a kid, there was a thing called a Sears catalog. It was about 3 or 4 inches thick, and
I remember that.
yeah. And so if you wanted something from the Sears catalog, there weren't all these stores, there wasn't the internet, there wasn't online shopping. If you wanted something from one of the Sears catalog, the first thing you had to do was save your money. Mm-hmm. And then the second thing you did was you ordered it. And then you had to wait a really long time for it to come through the mail. Now we can go to the internet and get whatever we want. We can pull up to a building, we can order burgers, tacos, burritos, and pull around the building, and somebody's handing it out the window to us. Right now, we're so impatient for everything.
Yeah.
And I think if we started practicing patience, it would be huge, because we need to understand, to your point, if I'm going to learn and grow, you have to be patient enough for let me to do that, and you can't expect me to do it overnight. And if you're going to be a great leader, you have to be. This is something I love to share with people. If you're a farmer, you're not going to put a seed in the ground and then come back tomorrow and dig it up because you don't have an apple tree yet. But if you're a farmer that's wise, you're going to put that seed in the ground, and you're going to water it, and you're going to fertilize it, and you're going to let it spend the season, and then at the end of the season, you're going to have your sprout, and you're going to make sure you protect it the next season. So at that point, when you do those kinds of things, it takes patience to grow that. It takes patience to grow yourself. It takes patience to grow others. So just start practicing patience and understand that nothing's going to happen in a nanosecond like your cell phone.
Yeah. We're never going to compete and be able to go as fast as this thing does. We have supercomputers in our pockets now that go faster and connect with people like we never have. We're never going to be that fast. But I feel
we don't
like,
want to be.
No, we don't want to be, because then we're missing out on what this piece of life is. But I think the Sears catalog thing took me to like Service Merchandise catalog when I was a kid, and I definitely knew the Sears too. But I remember going through that book, and you circle the things that you wanted, and through this thing for me, and I could speak from my perspective, but I think other people do it. It's because it's so fast. Sometimes I carry that energy, especially if I'm in a busy day and I have a lot of things coming at me. So I've like turned off my notifications. I've done a lot of things to be able to not have this thing go so fast, to come to my brain that fast, because it's not healthy for me. When everything's coming at me that fast, just like in life, when there's a lot of things coming at you, it's almost like your fight or flight is up, and it's like you're very on edge. You're very like nervous, and there's a lot that is there, and I don't think that's healthy for us as humans. And one thing, go ahead. Yeah. I think for me, you talked about a day of rest with the phone. I definitely think a day of rest is important with the phone, but even the nighttime too. But I think a principle of like, do you have stillness in your life? Are you taking time to just sit there, to sit in peace, to not have anything coming in you, where you could really process what your emotions are? And if you do, fantastic. But if you don't have stillness in your life, maybe that's where I recommend that you start. I also think a part of this is like, you talked about fast food earlier in a different context, but I think eating right is a piece of it. I think you talked about movement earlier. I think self-care is where I'm going this, which I think is the intake you do with your food too. But what are you doing for self-care too? What are you doing to take care of yourself? And we're never going to go as fast as this phone. We're never going to compete with everybody that we want to compete with. So for goodness gracious, can you take a day of rest? And for us in our faith, we take rest on Sundays. And that's a big piece of it. And turning off your phone is definitely a good practice. But the things we could learn when we sit in stillness, when we take care of our bodies, when we work out those emotions, because the body keeps the score, and we have a regular rhythm of having a day of rest, no matter what's coming at us those 6 other days, but we're able to reset and work from a place of rest, life changes for us, right? What were you going to say?
And I was going to say, too, that most people, again, we go back to awareness, most people are completely unaware of what they're putting in their mouth and what they're putting in their brain, what they're putting in their eyes.
Amen.
Right? And so on my feed for like YouTube as an example, things like Jim Rohn come up, right? And personal development, motivational videos. And those are things that I listen to, so that's what I'm fed. So just start becoming aware of what's in your feed. Because if it's and you're absolutely right, Jason, you hit that nail on the head. If people are watching this stuff that's the opposite side of whatever that might be, politics, religion, sports, for crying out loud, I went to a Bears game, this is years ago, went to a Bears game. the Bears beat the Vikings. And on the way out of the stadium, there's Bears fans that want to beat up Vikings fans just because they're Vikings fans, for crying out loud. And we won the game, and we still want to beat them up. What's that about? But again, what are you putting in, right? Because you're absolutely right. It will make you frantic.
Yeah, it's we got to take care of home first, and home, it could be your house, but the first home you got to take care of is your body and soul and your heart, and I think that's where a lot of this starts from, because from there we could build win-wins. We could grow as a community, we could grow as a society, we could be more abundant than we've ever been, but it starts at home. We said a lot today, and I'm really grateful for this conversation. If somebody's looking to be able to connect with you, how can they do that?
Well, like I said, I'm all over out there. Just they can go to louiesharp.com, and that'll lead them to my speaking website page. They can go to Sharp Auto Body. They can connect to me through there, and they can. My email address is louie@thegiftedleader.com or louie@sharpautobody.com. Either one of those will get them directly to me.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you. I appreciate you. I appreciate this conversation. I'm so glad that you reached out to have me on your show so that we could be able to connect. I knew of you before because of the roles that you're in life, but to be able to sit down, to be able to grow in friendship and in conversation has really, I feel like, has been a pivotal moment in my life that has given me a lot of hope. So I look forward to getting to know you more and continuing to build this friendship as we go. And I hope our audience got some valuable tidbits from our conversation about leading with love and about doing that inner work and all the other stuff that we talked about that came from your story. So appreciate you.
Yeah, I'm humbled and honored to have been here, and thank you for having me.
Yeah, awesome, man. Well, thank you. My friends, there's a lot going on in the world. Being a good leader starts at home. We each have our own journey, and our own journeys are different and unique. But don't compare your journey to anybody else, just as Louie said earlier in this conversation. And focusing on doing that inner work. We could live abundant lives if we fix our shit, and all of us got shit. And it really starts at home. And in this time in history, when this world seems to be very divisive in the ways that we're doing things, to be able to focus in on sitting back, taking care of ourselves, putting this thing down, being able to learn and grow, and to be able to ask yourself, is this emotion coming from a place of fear or a place of love? I think if we could sit back and we could reflect and we could allow ourselves grace, vulnerability, a little bit of humility, and we could go out into the community and offer that to other people, and we could focus in on building win-wins, we could shape a world that is completely different than what we are a part of now. And I hope that we could do that work, but it starts with each of us. So I hope and pray that you do that work. I'm going to continue doing that work. I'm pretty sure Louie's going to continue doing that work, because at the end of the day, we're stronger when we are our best selves, and we're stronger for ourselves. We're stronger for the people in our community, and we are stronger to be able to lead with love into, as Louie said throughout this conversation, lead with a servant mindset. If we come at it where it's not about us, but it's about them, and how can we lead and uplift other people, our world changes. But until we do that, yeah, I don't even want to say what I want to say next. But anyway, my friends, I appreciate you all listening. Probably the longest show we've ever done, but Louie had tons of knowledge to be able to drop, and I wanted you to hear it. Support local, love local, and we're stronger together. Peace.